It is Thursday, December 14th, 2023, and you are watching the MMA ECO live podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Chris Presnell, coming at you from live from beautiful Portland, Oregon, USA, to talk all things Asian MMA for your enjoyment. The year is wrapping up, but still got a couple weekends of really strong Asian MMA on the calendar. But this weekend for UFC, massive monster pay-per-view ending the year out. I feel like sometimes the end of year pay-per-views are a little bit hit or miss, at least the last couple years. Sometimes just kind of a normal pay-per-view. Other times they're able to stack it from the first prelim all the way to the end. And I am really excited for this pay-per-view, especially that Shavkat versus Stephen Thompson fight. So excited for that. But we will get into that. Basically, I will go through the Asian MMA schedule, probably some things you've heard of, some things that you have not, cover some Asian MMA news, and get to your questions after that. So you can drop those in the chat anytime you want. Before I get to the questions, though, I've got a really big announcement that I'm so pumped about, been holding close to my chest for a little bit. Some MMA ecosystem news that is going to radically enhance and take what I do to the next level. And kind of open the door to be able to expand in a lot of ways that I've always kind of dreamed in for a long time. So let's get into it and appreciate all of you watching. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Just a mere 30 subscribers away from hitting that magic 1,000 number. When I started out the year, I was basically starting with like a dead channel with hardly any subscribers on it. Hadn't really put any effort into this channel, and started the year thinking, screw it, let's try and make this channel into something. And when the year started, the whole goal was to try and hit 1,000 by the end of the year, which is that magic number for monetization, which then also opens the door up for a lot of other cool things. So just 30 subscribers away from hitting that goal, which is cool how like almost exact, if things just keep going, eventually we'll hit that goal. So that's exciting. Anyway, let's hit some fights. Let's talk about some fights. One that I'm really excited about for this weekend is One Friday Fights 45. Why am I excited for this one? Because every once in a while they'll hit us with these really good prospect fights, and this one is another good one. Nepal's Rabindra Dhant versus Pakistan's Ismail Khan. Both guys 6-0. Not often you get such a good prospect fight, country versus country there. And really, I mean, when you're talking about prospects from each of these countries, not a lot of other names out there that you're really like, yeah, I mean, this is kind of the guy right now. So really only two fighters that I can think of from Nepal, both Rabindra and Yukiang Dembe. But for Pakistan, there's been a couple guys here and there. In Matrix Fight Night, you've got Alumi Karim, their bantamweight champion. And then, of course, you've had like Ahmed Mushtaba from Pakistan, who fought Sage Northcutt earlier this year. But Ismail Khan, 6-0 so far, looks pretty good. Has, I think, won once or twice already in One Friday Fights. So Rabindra, both guys kind of, I would say, excel on the ground. Rabindra got really good grappling. Ismail Khan, really good wrestling. So that could be interesting. Maybe we'll get to see a striking fight. But Rabindra Dhant, I feel like he's one of those guys that if he, really either guy could, someone in their position could become a really big star. I'm telling you, every time I put something out for Rabindra Dhant, it like blows up. You will be so surprised to hear if I told you, like, people ask me like, what are your highest performing pieces or like social media posts from the year? Some of them would make sense to you, breaking fights, things like that. But a lot of other fights or a lot of other pieces would surprise you. And Rabindra Dhant has a very loyal fan base that loves to support him and share, things featuring him and his work. So yeah, he's kind of carrying Napoli's MMA right now. Pakistani MMA, I'm not really sure where that's at in terms of like fan interest. I feel like it could be a really big untapped market. Pakistan is one of the most populous countries in the whole world. A couple cities like Karachi, is one of the biggest cities in the world, and so I gotta think. And it seems like countries with like a Muslim religious background, high percentage of Muslims in the country, seem so far to be pretty good hotbeds for MMA. See that with like Dagestan, throughout the Middle East, throughout Central Asia as well. A lot of passionate fans. So Pakistan's one of those countries I'm just like, at some point we're gonna get the guy that's gonna set off the match to blow up powder keg. So interesting fight for a lot of reasons. Tomorrow I'll hit also on, there's a couple just kind of random shows throughout the world where I've got some notable Asian MMA fighters fighting. In Russia, RCC 17. Hardly ever talk about Russian MMA events on here, but that one has 3 Kazakh fighters. I think 3. I've got 2 written down here, and both these guys are in some pretty interesting fights. If y'all remember UFC light heavyweight Maxim Grishin, he is in action tomorrow against a Kazakh fellow by the name of a lot of Z's in this name, Asiljan Bakhtijanuli. I think that's how you'd say that. Fight takes place at 220 pounds. So yeah, Maxim Grishin fought several times for the UFC. Bakhtijanuli is a light heavyweight who is coming up. He's got a see what this guy's record is: 15-4-1, whereas Grishin is 32-10-2. But this guy Bakhtijanuli has a win over Emiliano Sordi, the Argentinian former PFL champion. He fought Sordi earlier this year in UAE Warriors and knocked him out in the second round, and then followed that up with another win in RCC. So I think because of that, he's probably on a lot of people's radar as a Kazakh prospect, especially like not a lot of Kazakh fighters on the like upper weight classes. Honestly, like at least in the UFC, I think Rakhmonov might be the heaviest Kazakh we've got in the UFC. Not a lot of like light heavyweight guys from Kazakhstan. So that is an interesting fight. There's also another fighter on this RCC card named Ali Kabdullah. He's 9-1-1. He's a lightweight fighting a Russian guy. But I kind of have him circled as well. He has got a pretty good record. His last couple fights, he's been fighting a lot of fighters with a lot of experience. And his last 2 fights, actually, Ali Kabdullah fought with One Friday Fights for his last 2 fights, won both of those by TKO. So, and that was against 2 Brazilian guys, Richard Godoy and Alisson Barbosa. So a fairly high level of competition for just having around 10 fights. He's fighting this guy, Maka Sharip Zainukov, 14-4 over at RCC. A couple others that I'll touch on. Brave CF80. You've got an Indian woman named Monika Kiran Ghag, whose record is a little bit sketchy. I kind of actually was assigned to work on her record with Tapology because there was some interesting stuff going on. Some organizations that weren't quite reputable. Some fights we weren't sure if they were pro or exhibition, which were with Kumite One League earlier this year and last year. Nevertheless, she's got a decent record. Still, I think has some developing to do before we're really talking about her as a prospect, but she is fighting at Brave. She's going to be fighting a Bahraini fighter named Sabrina Souza. And I think Sabrina Souza actually is making her pro debut. So this is an interesting one, but I think she's got a little bit of hype behind her. So interesting fight. Monika is stepping in on short notice as well. I can't remember if this is a flyweight or bantamweight, but she is tall. Monika is really tall and really lanky. The other Indian woman that was supposed to fight this weekend was Priya Sharma, who has been fighting and training in Brazil, was going to be fighting at Brazilian promotion SFT for the second time, but she injured her shoulder this week, so she's out of that fight. Otherwise, you got Cage Warriors 165. Indonesians closing out the year. They had their campaign this year throughout Cage Warriors Road to UFC. I mean, obviously One Pride MMA, but mainly those two promotions and mixed results. Indonesians, obviously Jekka had that big win after coming up short in the Road to UFC finals. Indonesians hit or miss, a little bit more miss in Cage Warriors, but you had like Cornelius Aridanong had a couple good wins with Cage Warriors. Most other guys had some struggles, but two Road to UFC alums, both Eperaim Ginting and Ronal Siahaan, fighting at Cage Warriors tomorrow in San Diego, California. And it seems like, I mean, how are you supposed to know about their competition, their opponents? Both of these guys that they're fighting, not super experienced fighters. Definitely on the lower end of things, I would say. And that's no disrespect. That's just kind of where they're at in their career. And I think that's perfect. I think for the Indonesian guys, we need to see, since they've been successful in Indonesia, then it's like, let's put them against some like lower level European or American guys, which has kind of been the strategy so far with that Cage Warriors MMA Academy. And yeah, some of those have gone better than others. So I don't really know what to expect from these fights tomorrow at Cage Warriors, but yeah, I do wish the best of luck to these two guys. That would really, I think, excite the Indonesian fan base if they could end the year on a win. And I do think both these guys are talented. It's just a matter of what's their coaching been like, and are they able to put it together? But helps that they're competing in the same city that they've been training in. That's for sure. So they have that to their advantage. So Eperaim Ginting, bantamweight, 6-1 record, fighting Sean Johnson, who is 4-6. And then Ronal Siahaan, further up the card, he's actually fighting an undefeated guy, Andrew Johnson Cabrera, who is 5-0. This is at flyweight. However, not necessarily the best competition for that 5-0. Very low-level starter fights for him. But he has choked out 4 of his 5 opponents. So that could be an interesting one. I'd probably say Ginting has a better chance of clinching that win. Ronal Siahaan, it seems like his opponent is a couple levels better. So let's go to Road FC. So I'm going to share my screen with you because I've already got it up here. So this Road FC card, it's got a couple weird fights at the top, and so I'm guessing are kind of more like gimmicky celebrity fights. I don't fully understand like what the story is behind them, but the rest of the card, it's kind of their season concluded back in October, like their tournament season. So they are kind of just, I think, giving more fighters some more fights from that season, or some that didn't compete at all. You see there's a women's fight on there, but the 2 fighters that I definitely see some promise, maybe 3 actually, is Yang Ji-yong, the third from the top there, who's fighting at 139 pounds, and then Lee Jung-hyun, another Road to UFC guy, fighting at flyweight. He's going to be fighting Lee Kil-soo. And you look at the records and kind of the track record of both of these opponents, and it seems like both of these are kind of tune-up fights. Although I believe Yang recently won his fight, but it's very strange. I would say Lee's fighting this guy, Lee Kil-soo. And flyweight, to me, seems like it's about the most abundant division in Asia, and which is a big region. But I'm surprised they didn't get him. That's a very strange opponent to me. John Hyun Ko said high risk, low reward. It seems like it's definitely a tune-up fight, or treated as a tune-up fight, unless it's literally like no one was available. Lee Jung-hyun has had a lot of really bad luck this year. I will say that. He was supposed to fight on some Eternal MMA cards, and those fights fell through. So they booked him on this Road FC event, and against this 1-1 guy. No harm in taking a tune-up fight if you're young and you just want to get your legs back under you. So that's kind of what that is. Young Ji-young, not really sure why he's fighting this 4-4 guy. I think he's a little bit better than that. Maybe just trying to build out his record. I don't know what the thinking is behind there. This other guy, Sergey Choi, he's had some pretty good finishes. I'm just looking at his record. I think it was his first fight in ARC, which is Road FC's kind of like not feeder league, but like amateur and lower level league. He's looked pretty good on there. His only loss is to Lee Jung-hyun. So I think he could be one to watch as well. He's fighting someone with quite a bit more experience than him, Park Hyung-gun. So Road FC, nothing that like super stands out as like a massive fight on this card, but a couple prospects that are just trying to get another win under their belt. So there you have it. Let's jet over to JCK. Let me take this off real quick. There we go. Going over to JCK. So this event is going down in Shanxi province at the JCK headquarters on Saturday. And there are a couple guys on this card I really like. In the main event, you've got a great flyweight fight between Shamuhar and Nigadan. Nigadan is a Tibetan fighter, one of the Unbowl fight guys, and overall has looked pretty good. In some ways, he kind of started off as a pure wrestler and I think was pretty one-dimensional, but he's starting to add in some striking as well. His last fight was very good. I think he finished the guy with a spinning back kick and some follow-up punches there. So he is one to watch. And Shamuhar, a Kazakh Chinese guy, is also a pretty good wrestler and has had some pretty good wins in JCK. So he's one to watch as well. Super young guy. Overall, really like that fight. Two prospects. And then the co-main is a lot of fun too. That's Aping Shala versus Lojo Zhangzuo. Lojo, another Tibetan guy, except he trains out of Harbin Longyun MMA, way up in the northeast. So opposite side of China. Real lanky guy, fights at featherweight. He's fighting Aping Shala, who's an E fighter who at one point, I think we were kind of pegging him as a prospect when he was just kind of getting started, and then fought a little bit above his pay grade a few times. So he's got 2 straight losses, but he's got really good hands, really good boxing. Maybe a couple years down the line, he'll emerge as like a really solid prospect. But I'm kind of surprised they're giving him this fight against Lojo, because Lojo is a lot more experienced and kind of coming along. Like he's been finished a handful of times, but he's fought all around the place, and I think is probably a couple steps ahead of where Aping Shala is. But overall, the styles both guys are really exciting styles. The other fighter on this card, Nartai Kazabai, in that third fight from the top, another Kazakh Chinese guy. I kind of had him pegged as a prospect. He's coming off a loss. Interested to see how he'll rebound. And look who they're giving him. They're giving him Reginaldo Vieira, a former UFC Tough Brazil winner. Yeah, that's the guy. That's Reginaldo Vieira. He's been fighting in China recently. He was, I think he fought with WLF and submitted Huang Yele. So this is kind of an odd fight. I expect Vieira to submit Kazabai or finish him in a variety of different ways. Don't really understand this matchmaking a whole lot, but very interesting. And then, JCK does these one-night 4-man tournaments, which is, I think, a great way to build new talent. and get people experience and create a little bit of interest behind each of these events that, you know, they crank them out in succession. They're mostly at the JCK studio. So, you know, things could feel a little bit stale, but I do like that they've added these 4-man tournaments. The one on this Saturday is really interesting. I feel like it's like this every week where you've got a couple of guys that are at least broadly kind of nobodies on the Chinese MMA scene. And then you've got one really, really good fighter who you're probably expecting to win. So that guy is Liu Yongqiang. He's there on the bottom left. 6-1 record, fought with WLF several times. Kind of still in that beginning phase of his career, but the record definitely does stand out. But yeah, he could be one to watch too. A lot of good prospects on this card. Some interesting matchmaking for sure. But yeah, that's JCK for you. So let's hop over and talk about UFC 296. So hit me with your questions if you have any about the event. I did a preview on the Shavkat versus Wonderboy fight a few weeks ago, and I really enjoyed making that video. That was a really fun video for me to make. Overall, I ended up narrowly choosing Wonderboy in the fight, and I think the only reason I did that was because I felt like both Wonderboy's experience at the top and his style at least presented a really tough matchup for Shavkat. All that to say, I like some of the pushback I got from folks was just like, what are you talking about? Like Shavkat, I can't believe like you're not picking Shavkat, and people pointing out odds and things. I'm like, hey, look, I'm not necessarily saying that I will be surprised if Shavkat wins. I could actually imagine Shavkat winning either by submission, like a guillotine choke or like a standing rear naked, some kind of choke that he just like grabs in a transition. I could see him finishing that way. His ground and pound is also very good, but I don't know if I see him finishing the fight that way, just because Wonderboy is very resilient and I think he's pretty good at like getting back to his feet. So I would either see Shavkat winning by some kind of choke submission or by decision because of like ground and pound, things like that. That's how I see Shavkat winning if he does. But otherwise, I think Thompson will win a decision. If the fight primarily unfolds on the feet, I think Wonderboy will probably win a decision, just because I think Shavkat has some defensive issues with moving his head, being mobile, entering and exiting the clinch without taking damage. So just because of that, I think Wonderboy, and Wonderboy's his takedown defense has gotten pretty good, especially like his kind of Greco style takedown defense against those kind of takedowns. It just seems like if you're going to beat Shavkat, a guy like Wonderboy would be the kind of skills that you would want to beat him. All that to say, Wonderboy is 40 years old. He's taken a lot of mileage. Shavkat improves between every fight. He is the new guy, one of the new guys coming up in welterweight. So, and he's a hammer. So wouldn't be surprised if Shavkat won the fight. But if you force me to make a pick, barely lean towards Stephen Thompson. Looking forward to it one way or the other. But yeah, I mean, it hit me if you have any more questions. Some more news. So I'll throw up a few things on the screen. This fight was just announced today. Elibi Idris fighting Edison Fajeda at Niza FC 56, which goes down. I guess I technically should have included that in this week's episode because technically it's going to go down next Thursday. So by the time we have the podcast next week, this event will have already happened. But yeah, Idris, he is a flyweight Kazakh prospect that I think is at the top of a lot of people's I mean, who actually has a Kazakh prospect list? Not many people, but for the few of us that do have, I have one. Hi, he is near the top of my list. He's a flyweight prospect. Looks good so far. He's going to be fighting Fajeda, who is a Dana White's Contender Series alum, a victorious one at that. He holds a split decision win over Cholun. So that's kind of where he's coming from. I'm so glad they got him this opponent. The matchmaker from NYSA reached out to me to see if I knew of any Chinese guys that may want the fight. And I reached out to a couple guys that weren't available. But yeah, I'm glad they were able to get him a quality opponent and not just some scrub off the street or with just a few fights. So NYSA FC matchmakers, Jan, the guy that is the matchmaker there, one of the best in the world, really talented guy. But glad they made this fight. That's awesome. Another fight that's going event that's going down this weekend, which obviously I don't know hardly anything about really anyone on this. I hardly ever touch on Indian MMA outside of Matrix Fight Night. And I will say that there are like shows that go down in India, obviously outside of Matrix Fight Night. They're happening all the time. But as far as like shows that are producing like mostly pro fights and really like quality events, there's not a whole lot of those. This one, however, I've seen shared around from a lot of Indian fighters and a lot of people I really respect. Bidang FC. This is going down in a city called Guwahati, which I need to look up where that is, if that's a suburb of a bigger city or on the outskirts of a bigger city. But a couple guys, Lula in the main event, I think he's 2-0. This other guy, gosh, I can't even read it. No way I have that guy's name memorized. Midrol Saikia on this poster. He is 4-0, and he recently won a contract to Matrix Fight Night through their contender. Like Matrix Fight Night, they've got this contender series program that just went down last week, I believe. And I don't know how they classify it, if it's maybe exhibition. I think they're exhibition, but they get like hundreds of applicants and have fights over like multiple days in a row. And then the heads of Matrix Fight Night, the Shroffs, Aisha and Krishna, they then select like a dozen fighters to give Matrix Fight Night contracts to. So it's kind of their developmental side of things. And he was one of the big guys that they gave one to, and he's got to fight this weekend. So there's that. In that main event, Lula fighting this guy Kurbanov. I'm kind of confused here because as recently as today, the promotion Konggu Fight Night in Bali, Indonesia, this guy is also fighting in the co-main event against a Chinese guy, Agu Lali. So he's like double booked for 2 weeks a Russian guy booked in India and also in Indonesia within a span of about 2 weeks. So hopefully that is not bad news for the for Indonesia. I'm not sure what's the story there, but that's very interesting. Is that all? Yeah, that's all I got. Oh, Road to UFC. That was just announced like an hour ago. So Road to UFC, the finals are going to go down February 3rd in Las Vegas at the Apex. And I heard that, and I actually heard that a couple days ago. Someone on one of the UFC China social media accounts posted that and then removed it. And I was like trying to figure out like, oh, hey, is this legit? And then I heard like, well, they're not really sure if it's going to be February 3rd or February 10th. There's a chance they could split it into two between the 3rd and the 10th, because I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at these fight nights, and the one on the 3rd already has 13 fights. The one on the 10th, I believe, has 10 fights finalized. So like the 10th is really, you could do the 10th and make a 4-fight card or try and split it up between the two. I think they made a good choice, and ultimately, because once I heard about that, once I saw the announcement today, I reached out to some folks and they said, yeah, it's going to take place in a separate event after the UFC card on February 3rd, which is good because this way they get to broadcast it. If you're airing it on the prelims of this show, what time is it going to be in Asia? Well, it's going to be in the morning, and it's going to be early morning on Sunday. Not the best. So by moving these fights after the main event, they're going to air 9:30 Pacific time, 12:30 on the East Coast, which I know in Korea that's going to be like, and I think China too, that's going to be 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday. So that's the details there. I don't know yet if it's going to air on ESPN Plus with the rest of the card before it, or if it's going to be on Fight Pass. I would think probably on Fight Pass, just since that's the medium they've chosen so far. Although the finals last year, since they aired on the UFC card, were on ESPN. So we'll see. We will see on that. But I'm honestly shocked that they booked them so early. And what was the date? You guys remember the date that the finals aired this year? It was February 4th. It was literally 1 day difference between the two final shows. I found that really interesting. Both of those shows were kind of scheduled, I think, later than they would have liked. But here we are. Yeah. Here we are. Glad that they were able to do those finals. I told you guys I thought it would probably be in like March by the time they got everyone's visas and by the time they're able to find a spot on a UFC card. But why not just make it its own thing? So that's great. Okay. The announcement for me is that so far MMA, what is MMA Ecosystem? MMA Ecosystem is a YouTube channel. It started as an Instagram page, still is. Some things have changed with that, but it's Instagram, it's YouTube, and I'm also on Twitter, X, and on Threads, technically on TikTok too. But yeah, so that's what it is. It's the social media bunch. But going forward, I think I have sometimes wondered, like, okay, what's really like, what is this? Is this like a YouTube channel and things kind of flow out from the YouTube channel? And you think about like MMA on Point. I'm sure you guys are familiar with them. Amazing. One of the best MMA YouTube channels. But they also have an Instagram account where they'll post unique things on there. They're not doing anything super like edgy or breaking news on their other social media accounts, but like they have things to keep fans engaged, interested, things like that on their other social media accounts, primarily a YouTube channel. I think like when I started the Instagram page, I was growing like crazy. You all would not believe how quickly that page grew. There were days where I would have 300 new followers every day as just like a random dude with an MMA page reposting pictures of fighters, posting reels of highlight reel finishes, trying to be like creative, trying to give a level of quality to things that I didn't always see from people at my stage. So it's trying to do some of my own stuff, but like overall, yeah, it was just blown up. And that was because Instagram just was trying to get reels off the ground. Eventually, they were even paying people for views on reels. They're really trying to get reels embedded in kind of our social psyche. And then that all dried up, basically. And I think in response to that, I kind of stopped posting a lot of reels because they weren't getting me nearly what they used to. I would get sometimes a couple million views on reels, and now a reel that does 10K views is like hitting it out of the park. So, and you look at like Twitter, X, like that platform's changing all the time. Who knows if it's going to be here in a year or two? Yeah, I'm sure it will. But like social media, what I'm trying to say is social media can be so back and forth and fleeting, and you can grow a lot at one time and then not. In some way, that's the way everything is on the internet. But I think one thing that at this point makes a lot of sense, and once I kind of looked into it, I honestly, a couple months ago, was having dinner with a friend, and they're like, hey, have you ever considered starting a website? And I was like, honestly, not, but I'm interested. And so I started thinking about it. I did a lot of looking into like, what would that look like? What would that require from me? Would that just be a lot of extra work that doesn't really have a payoff? Because for me, like I've got to make something from it. Doing it just out of my own goodwill and kindness is not going to help. And spending hours every week working on it is not really going to like, it's not something I can spend time on right now. So basically I looked through it and I've decided I'm going to start a website. So yesterday I bought, so it's mostly already built by now. I've been working on it for a little while now, and it's going to go live. If everything goes according to plan, it's going to go live January 1st, which at this point I'm about 70% done. Got all the heavy lifting, hard stuff out of the way. And what is that going to look like? So first of all, MMAecosystem.com. Simple enough. The first choice I would choose for a website. What I was, going back to why I got into all of this in the first place was that I felt like Asian MMA did not have, because of the time zones, the cultural difference, the language, all that stuff, it didn't have the exposure in the English-speaking media that I wish it had. Organizations like One Championship and Ryzen would get like most of the Asian coverage, honestly, as it should, but like I wish that there were more opportunities for fans just to like be able to like consume the week to week beat of Asian MMA news in a really easy way, to where they didn't have to translate web pages, all that stuff. They could see highlights, they could get connected with fighters on social media, all of that. And so going back to that initial reason why I started the social media pages, also, that's the same reason for the website. And the other advantage of having a website versus social media is that people use Google more than any other web page on the internet. And sometimes social media posts will come up in a Google search, but really, like, if you really are trying to build a brand, you need something that can be found on Google. You need something that people can go to a singular place to find everything that you have. So starting the website for that, I have some ideas for it, but right now, to start things off, it's really just going to be a few things. It's going to be just little news blurbs. It's going to be like fight card announcements. It's going to be stuff that I've put on other places, but like Instagram is not the best place for finding news. Maybe like breaking news. Twitter is the best place right now for breaking news, but like, scrolling through picture, images on a feed in Instagram is not always the best way, or like sharing results. So I'll like post results to an Asian MMA event on my Instagram story. And then sometimes I'll file that under like one of the highlights on Instagram, but it's just that's not a place that like almost no one's going to find that 24 hours after the fact. So just realizing like, okay, Instagram, I'm trying to use it for things that Instagram is not really built and optimized for. Whereas if I just kind of even like copied and pasted some of these same results over to a web page, then I think that it would actually find the right people. And isn't Tapology post results, things like that, SureDog, all those sites. Yes, sometimes, and sometimes not. And I also, something that you can do on this website is you can there's a drop down for news, and you can do like Kazakh MMA news, Chinese MMA news, Japanese MMA news. You can go through and you can find the results, fight cards. I'm also going to have a page with the full calendar on there of fights. I've sometimes shared that publicly, different mediums in the past, but I'm going to basically share what's on my computer with all of you all. I'm like, as I get excited, I like lean into the camera, and then I'm like, wow, half my head's being cut off. Okay. But yeah, so calendar news. So it's going to start off real basic. In the design, what was really important for me with the design was that it was extremely clean, very basic, bold, easy to read and use on the computer and on the phone. as well as, but just like ridiculously simple and easy to read was really important to me. That's what I really like out of websites, is when they're just like so dang clean. And it looked, right now, guys, it looks really good. There'll be splashes of color, but otherwise it's just going to be a very basic, bare bones website, easy to find things. Hopefully not having to like click around too much to find things you're looking for, but eventually I'm going to put more stuff on there. Any kind of original stuff that I make will be on there. If I break news, then it'll show up as an article on there. So there'll actually be like a solid place other than just like a tweet. So that has been, I think I was always going to head that way, but I just felt like it wasn't in the cards at various times, but it is now. If I ever want to add writers or add more staff to the team to also contribute to that, that'll be perfect. It means they don't have to like log into my personal, like the work social media account. Eventually, you know, that's something that we'll look at, but like, it just makes a lot of sense right now. And I think the reason I'm starting so bare bones is basically for me to be like, cause I'm still one guy, just for me to be like, okay, I don't know how much I'm going to make off of this, off of the ad revenue. And so I need it to be something where it doesn't take me tons and tons of time of just writing without an assurance that there's going to be a payoff. So it's going to be real basic and bare bones, just to get things in Google searches, out of my Instagram stories, onto the internet. So there it is. More to come on that. And my goal is to have that January 1st. Bought the domain yesterday. Already designed most of the site. So here we go. New chapter. Next year, I'll maybe talk about it more in the next couple weeks, but next year there's that. And then there's like 2 other huge things, way bigger than that announcement, in the works that I'm super excited for, that are going to be like career, like really big moments in the career, which I'm really excited about. All right, enough droning on. We're already 45 minutes past. Let's hop to some questions. Yeah, I'll hit 1K. Yeah, it'll happen. It'll obviously happen. Before he wrestle, oh man, how much does that guy have? That would be awesome if I could hit it before WrestleJamia. I don't see it. Profile isn't coming up. I'll find him later. Yeah, I'll hit 1K. I'm working on a video right now that may actually be a small series that is going to be like the most in-depth, like journalistic piece that I've created so far for YouTube, where there's a lot of like data that I've collected. I've collected the data. Now I'm just like working on the storytelling aspect of it, hoping to hit film this Friday and tomorrow. Probably going to be split into like 1 or 2, maybe 3 videos. And I am really pumped about this. It's felt like writing a college paper, honestly. But yeah, appreciate that. So Zhang versus Yang not being in China. Said in the past, Whaley wasn't booed at MSG at 268, but I know someone was there and they're booing Whaley hard. I mean, you're always going to find someone booing somewhere, but not being in China, I'm trying to think of why the UFC would not do that. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to like build more of a star presence in the US, but I don't see how that doesn't have an even bigger payoff in China. I have no clue. I got nothing for you. I say have it in China, which we're gonna see it. It feels like since they announced Suarez versus Lemos, seems like that's the only fight left to make, right? Unless Rose says she wants to come back down to 115 and fight for a trilogy, which I highly doubt. But yeah, looks like we're getting Zhang versus Yan next. Don't have a lot of interest in WMMA. Fair enough, to each their own. But the debut of Sabrina Laurentina de Souza is one I'll be paying attention to too. Future of the women's 135 division. Yeah, for sure. She's the one I mentioned earlier, going to be fighting Monika Ghag at Brave. So yeah, for sure. I don't know much about her at all. Obviously, she's 0-0 and fighting out of Bahrain, like a little bit out of my area of focus, but we'll definitely be interested for sure. 135, can't get enough of those too. Could see her in the UFC after 3 fights. UFC China is an uphill battle. I mean, really, they don't want to book fights there at the moment, or that one specific China versus China fight. Can only push certain China fighters to Vegas or other locations. Trying to understand your question. Well, right now, China just has an extra level of red tape and bureaucracy to doing basic things that the UFC doesn't normally have to deal with. And so that creates a lot of obstacles. It's not like Abu Dhabi where it feels like they just got the keys there. Abu Dhabi loves them and they can come and put on these big events. But for China, it is just like they have the talent. They can make the cards technically. I think they can, you think about the Singapore card from last year. That was a pay-per-view. There's no reason why they couldn't just do a card that big in China as well. China has plenty of basketball arenas for it. There's over 100 cities with over 1 million people in China. Most or second most populated country in the world, and kind of like the crown jewel of audiences that everyone around the world was going to. So the UFC, so there's that push pull, but and they'll figure it out. I think we will get to a day when basically like Shanghai is like Singapore, and they're able to put on big fights in Asia regularly, periodically. There'll be a day when we get 4 to 5 events in China every year. I just don't know if that'll be next year or the year after or the year after that. I'm really interested to see what their next move is. How do you feel about channels like MMA Guru who talk inflammatory about fighters? Does it ruin the sport? Do you feel bad that engagement bait is getting more traction than quality? Well, I mean, people click on it, so I don't really watch channels like that, honestly, and I haven't really watched much of Guru stuff. I've watched his crazy rant against Dagestani fighters, and that was eye-opening. That was so weird. Very weird. Yeah, I hear this. I keep hearing this like thrown around. I hear this this phrase of like MMA media sucks. I've seen hats worn around by various people in the industry that say like make MMA media great again. And I'm honestly just like, does it suck? Like with having YouTube and the internet having no barrier for entry, you're going to have all kinds of different media accounts, but you're also going to have a lot of really good ones. And I don't feel like MMA media is in a bad place at all. I think that there's a lot of great people working in MMA media. Do those people always get like the front row seat at UFC events? I don't think so. I think honestly, like none of my favorite media members. Well, no. I back off from that. There are some really good MMA media members that I can think of that are normally at UFC events, pressers, things like that. But no, I think MMA media is fantastic. I consume it on the regular. I habitually go to the same people and their shows week after week, and I just kind of stick to that. While I'm working, typing along for Tapology, I'll have MMA Hour or The Ringer Show or Luke Thomas on, and life is good. There's amazing media members. I think that a lot of times the folks that say those things like MMA media is really bad, they have a certain slant or a certain agenda behind that, or they have a different idea of what I think people confuse journalism with media a lot. And I think that is a lot of the confusion, I would say. So saying Guru's fine, but he needs to sharpen it up and improve the show image. I agree. Yeah. I agree. To his credit, it's amazing that he's gotten as big as he's gotten with a pretty low-level production setup. I've wondered that too. Don't know if you saw the Migu interview with Colby. I saw a screenshot that he was being interviewed by the Migu interviewer. He said that Zhang Weili is his favorite female fighter. I find it interesting that a person like him likes Weili. That is a little bit surprising. Colby Covington, I do not have that guy figured out in the slightest. You think that you know him. You think you know what he's going to do. You think you can assume what all of his politics and personality are, but then he surprises you and you're like, I don't actually know if I know who you really are. So very surprising. I've heard from many people that he's a very nice guy in person and a fairly chill person. Obviously, I don't love the way that he carries himself in a lot of ways. I don't mind a whole lot if he wins or loses on Saturday. But he is not as simple as he is more complex than just like the MAGA bro personality. So it definitely surprises me. So why was Tapology the last to rank Tatsuro Taira at 125, and what is his rank now? Let's just see. So the way Tapology rankings work, I've had a lot of questions about that, and it does not work like a lot of MMA media site rankings work. Most MMA media sites, they have a panel of media members, personalities that cast their own rankings, and then they average out those votes. Tapology basically they combine how it's based off of like user feedback is what Tapology. And then I think there's also an algorithm that weights people's wins and losses, like the strength. So like if you beat say a 15-1 fighter, then your ranking is going to go up more than it would if you beat, Lee Jung-hyun, for example, beating a 1-1 fighter this Saturday. It's a little bit different. So, and you said that they're the last to rank him. So, okay, Tyra's ranked at number 17, which I mean, I would rank Tyra, if I was submitting my own UFC rankings, I would probably put him at 15 or 14. The problem with Taira, even though he's 5-0 in the UFC and a lot of really impressive finishes, is that he just has not fought like the best flyweights to really push him up into that ranking spot. So he's been fighting fighters that are not even necessarily just outside, like Carlos Hernandez, who he just beat last Saturday. I wouldn't even say Hernandez was like just outside the flyweight rankings. Just outside the flyweight rankings, I'm thinking of like Alan Nascimento and Bruno Silva. He might actually be ranked. Jake Hadley, I would put up there. But the thing is, yeah, Tyra just has not fought that high level of relative competition in the flyweight division. So I think that's what's held him back in the rankings. But yeah, and then the other thing with Tapology is like, because there's no one choosing Tyra's ranking. I think, I don't know what the timing is, but like there's some kind of like back end refresh where like, I don't know, whenever, how the whole system basically refreshes on the back end every once in a while. And then that's when those rankings would come out. So I don't know what the timing is on that as well. But yeah, they've got Tyra at 17. I'm getting, he's not ranked in the UFC. So it's basically matches up what the UFC is, probably just outside the top 15. Personally, though, I would put Tyra ahead of a couple of the guys at the bottom of the top 15 rankings in UFC. So yeah, Lee Jong Young has a lot of potential. Could see him in the UFC eventually. He's only 21. Yeah, sure. Yeah, no rush on that. He will get there eventually. Totally. What do I think about the people that disrespect her on a regular basis? Fighters and fans alike. Sorry, going back. Oh, what do I think Colby's comments about Zhang Weili say about the people that disrespect her on a regular basis? Yeah, people are going to have agendas, and also don't assume that you know someone's agenda. Yeah, all I have to say about that. Also, regarding Tapology, did anyone give them any flack for having Ankalaev ranked at #1 light heavyweight going into the Walker fight? And he landed. I don't know. For the Tapology rankings, I would mainly say those are there for reference, but it doesn't, like, to me, and I may not be in every circle, but it doesn't seem to me like the Tapology rankings are like the rankings that a lot of MMA fans are really going for. Like, I feel like most of the rankings people are using are ESPN, UFC rankings. I don't know who else. It doesn't seem to me, I don't hear a lot of people going back and forth about Tapology rankings. I think especially if people really knew how, and there is I've sent around the webpage that explains in full how the rankings are compiled, and you can find that on Tapology too. If you look around for it, there's a page telling you how the rankings are decided. I think if people really knew that, they maybe wouldn't have as much issue. And what I tell people is like, hey, don't like, I mean, I've even had commentators for MMA broadcasts reach out to me, just be like, hey, just like had this question about the rankings there. And I'm like, it's great that you want to like it is helpful for listeners to hear like, oh, this is Tapology's number one prospect in this region. Yeah, that's helpful. But since it is like automated like that, use it as reference, not as fact and a definitive stance. It's merely, for me, I use those rankings merely as a way to see like, hey, who are the best fighters in China right now? Let me go through the top 50 pound for pound prospects in China. Most likely it's going to give me the best. Maybe a couple like 1-0, 2-0 guys that aren't on there, but for the most part, it's going to show you the best in that region. So that's kind of my opinion on that. Which I can't remember if I mentioned this. I didn't at the beginning of the show, but I do work for Tapology. I manage the China records, manage the Pacific Northwest of the United States records. And then I also do like, you see those like live tickers when they have live events. I've been doing a lot of those kind of shows, been doing more of the UFC stuff recently. So yeah, been working there. So what do you saying Uncle Ev has a sumo body? What's your opinion on tune-up fights in the UFC? Do you think it's okay in the regional scene? I think it is okay in the regional scene. However, high risk, low reward. That you still have to be careful and make sure the matchmaking goes in your favor. There's been a couple situations where fighters have like come off of something like Road to UFC, and then they've taken something that looks like a tune-up fight that was actually a bad matchup, and then they lost that fight. So really risky fight. Also, a tune-up fight is not the same as just bad matchmaking, or just lopsided matchmaking. A tune-up fight is mainly just to get your confidence back and just literally let your record show that you're coming off of a win. That's what a tune-up fight is, where you have like a 95% chance of winning. It's not only good for you in terms of records, but also like comparing records on paper, but also the matchmaking works in your favor as well. I feel like there aren't enough of them in the UFC, and I think the UFC's ethos is the best fight the best. So there's like really no place for a tune-up fight, because a tune-up fight, I know they happen a lot more in boxing. It's hard to sell a tune-up fight, you know? So I understand that from the UFC's perspective of it's really, really hard to get people pumped about a tune-up fight. Like, what would you rather watch? Would you rather watch Shavkat fight Wonder Boy this Saturday? Or would you rather watch, Wonder Boy fight Trevin Giles? I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's hard to sell that fight. So I understand it from the promotional perspective, but I think more fighters could stand to do it. Imagine Tony Ferguson's career if he were to try to take tune-up fights. There's a few people out there, believe it or not, there are a few people out there that are almost seeing the Paddy Pimblett fight as a tune-up fight for Tony Ferguson. A few, not the majority whatsoever, but some people are seeing it that way, which I think is really interesting. I would like to see it happen more, but I understand why from the promotional side, it's a hard sell. No clever pun today. Come on, man. How does Road FC have the funds to give out $1 million? It's not $1 million. It's $1.1 million, which you may actually be right in that it's $1 million in total. $1 million when you're a business, especially one of the bigger MMA businesses in Korea, is not honestly a ton of money. You just need to get honestly one or a couple rich people to invest in it for you. That's what it is. It's people investing. It's not that they raise that money through broadcasting fees and ticket sales. They're getting some kind of rich person in Korea or somewhere to invest that money. It's the same with PFL. PFL gives out $6 million a year just from those 6 fights. Not to mention all the other fights throughout the year, but they get that money invested. But yeah, so how many, like, were there 3 tournaments, and each of them, I think that much money is, I forget how much 1 million Korean won is, but it's, I want to say either like 80,000 or 200,000 US dollars, something around there. So all things considered, it's not going to be 1 million, but it's a lot of money. Not sure if you saw the news about Lemos. Oh, I totally did. I've seen the replies that the same people that picked Lemos are now angry with her and siding with Suarez. Do you think these fans were just Whaley haters? Do you think that Suarez's fan base is really weird and thinking that she deserves the belt just because of the hardship, even though she's done almost nothing in 3 years? Her record and resume, her record is exceptional. Her resume needs just a little bit more. I thought this was the perfect fight to make. That to say, it is a really tough fight for Amanda Lemos. And honestly, ton of respect for Amanda Lemos in taking this fight, which stylistically looks like a very bad matchup for her. We're talking about tune-up fights. This is the opposite of a tune-up fight. This is like, I just got my ass whooped. Let's go ahead and do the same thing again. Is basically what this fight is for Lemos. Now, she might be thinking, hey, this is basically Wei Li, but without the striking. That could be, Wei Li is known for her striking. Suarez not necessarily known for her striking, although I'm not saying she doesn't have it. But yeah, tough fight for Lemos. I think most of us are thinking that this is going to go to the ground and Suarez is going to grapple her to death. The hard thing about this is that I don't see Lemos as a top 5 strawweight. And if Suarez beats Lemos, I think the narrative is going to be, okay, she deserves a title shot now, but she still, in my opinion, will not have beaten a top opponent, like a top opponent. At the same time, like, okay, she just beat someone who fought for the title. Before that, she beat Andrade, a former champion, pretty good fighter. Suarez versus whoever wins Zhang versus Yan, is still a good fight. Let's just make the fight. We all know Suarez is good, but I agree the resume isn't really there. Suarez has all of the ingredients that command a really strong fan base. Likable personality, really good comeback story, really like strong punishing style, has a lot of finishes. So, Suarez is going to have a very strong, intense fan base. So just like be accustomed to that. That's going to happen. She got a really strong fan base. But do I think the fans are just Wei Li haters? I don't know. People are going to like who they like. They're going to support their fighters. So you agree with me on the Shavkat versus Wonderboy analysis. Do you think people miss the footwork aspect of the matchup that Dan, Tom, you, and Ghost mentioned? Why does Shavkat not get the same hype as Khamzat? Well, one, Khamzat is way more outspoken than Shavkat. Totally different sides of the personality wheel, right? Also, Khamzat has fought. So Khamzat has recently beaten Gilbert Burns and Nate Diaz. And then he also fought, I'm blanking on who he fought last October in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, the guy, I think his competition has been better. Kamaru Usman, of course. So like, and Kevin Holland as well. He's got a win over Kevin Holland, Li Jingliang. So really like, Chimaev's resume, I think, is a lot better than Rakhmonov's so far. Thompson is the best fighter that Rakhmonov has fought, whereas Chimaev has fought some pretty top guys for his last couple fights. I think that is another reason why the outspoken thing, I would say, is why the hype is different, being tested, and fought some pretty different kinds of fighters as well. It'll come. It'll happen. Like Shavkat has just been going up. He's gonna, if he wins, especially if he wins this Saturday, he's gonna keep going there. A lot of top level analysts that I listen to, media members, have been batting around that they think that he could get a title shot after this win. So if he wins, so for sure. So sorry, Red Room, wasn't really sure what you're saying there. So I asked this on Sound and Pound by my friends Alex Mahunin and Drake Riggs. And which I've checked out that show, really enjoyed listening to those guys. You know how Lemos and Aldana got dominated by champs Yeah, particularly in grappling. Why does the UFC gives them tough matchups on the prelims afterwards? Well, Lemos didn't get a tough fight on the prelims. She has not fought yet. However, Aldana is fighting Carol Hosa this Saturday. I think that's a more, I don't feel like that is a tough fight necessarily. Like Nunes has really good grappling and like pretty solid wrestling too. And that doesn't necessarily stand out to me. Also, Hosa is ranked what is she, like 12 or 13, something around there, the bottom of the top 15 at bantamweight. So I feel like, I'm not going to use the word tune-up, but I feel like this is a pretty big step down for her, where she's ranked in the top 5. Aldana is. So I feel like this is an appropriate response. I'm with you in that, like, okay, I am a huge Arena Aldana fan. I watched her first fight with Invicta live back in 2014. And after that, got to watch many of her fights outside the UFC with Invicta, and have gotten to meet her. Like, I have always been a really big Aldana fan. I am like peeved at the UFC for not putting her in that top prelim slot, because what was it? Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell got moved up to the first of the main card this Saturday. And then I'm like, all right, great. Now we've got Aldana versus Hosa in that top spot on ESPN. Except instead they moved up Menafield and Justin Jacoby up to that spot. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, I mean, I know Carol Hosa, not the biggest name. Aldana, pretty soft-spoken personality, but she did just fight in a pay-per-view main event. Like, she's really like well-loved in Mexico and beyond. So, and by myself, come on. What are we doing here, guys? Let's see. Going back to Shavkat versus Wonder Boy. Was that made because Wonder Boy rightfully declined Michelle Pajeda and the UFC was mad at them? I'm not sure. You know me. I don't know the reasons behind why fights were booked. Welterweight at one point was like totally wide open. No one was booked. And then they booked like everybody. Ah, man, it sucks so bad that we lost the Ian Machado, Gary, and Grant Neal fight, because for a second we had 3 really, really good welterweight fights booked on the main card. And I feel like it is a big missed opportunity by the UFC to not have more events where at least your main card of a pay-per-view is like half of the rank, is like all of one division, like kind of a theme. I love that stuff. They did it for a pay-per-view like 10 years ago where it was all heavyweights. That was so cool. And the main event was a heavyweight title fight. I loved that. I don't care. Pick a division and I'm interested, just because like the whole division is going to change overnight. So I don't know why going with this one, I think just going down the line of like who was available, Shavkat, I think, deserved the best opponent that they could find for him. Gilbert Burns, I think, was still recovering from injury. Maybe Bilal Muhammad was. I don't know why they didn't book the Muhammad fight. And honestly, I think Wonder Boy was the best fight they could get for him. Wonder Boy, I mean, just put yourself in his shoes. He has kind of said like he doesn't want to just be a stepping stone. He wants like big fights that are going to get him to the title. I mean, put yourself in his shoes. You're 40 years old. You may retire after your next loss. Otherwise, you want to try to squeeze the biggest fights and maybe another title shot in the sport that you love, that you've been practicing for a long time. Like you really don't have much time left. Every honestly month that you're healthy is a blessing. So I can see why Wonder Boy was a little bit picky with his selection of like, hey, I don't want to fight like the 15th ranked guy. I don't want to fight someone outside the rankings like get me someone that if I beat them, I'm going to be right in line for a title. I can understand that from his perspective. If you're and he got, and that's what he got, like beating Shaw. If Wonderboy beats Shavkat, especially if he gets a stoppage over him, we may be talking about Wonderboy in line for a title next, even though I don't think that we're going to get that. Bilal, should get that, or there's a couple ways you could go with that. But I mean, honestly, good for Wonderboy for campaigning for himself in that. I see where he's coming from. So yeah, going to start a website. Is it going to be one made from Google Web so it's free? No, I'm not using Google Web. I'm using Wix. I asked around and that was recommended to me. So far, it's been relatively very easy. I've dabbled with website design a little bit in the past. Nothing much to where it's like an employable skill, but kind of just and also like, I mean, I've written for a handful of MMA media sites, so kind of gotten to see the back end of like what it looks like to write up a post and edit it and all that. Wix has been very easy, and I feel like most of y'all could do it as well. But I mean, if you're asking if it's going to be free, it's not going to be free for me, but it's not much. It should hopefully pay for itself pretty easily. But yeah, congrats on the website announcement. Definitely will check it out. Yeah, we're going to start out real small, basic, just real bare bones, and then just build up from there. Hopefully just fill a lot of gaps that there are of just like Asian MMA coverage. There are some here and there. I know there's like, there's some Indian, like Locker Room is a great Indian news site. There's a couple out there that kind of specialize in different locales, and my aim isn't necessarily to like take away from that. I'm mostly looking at where is the demand that's not being filled, or if it is being filled, if there's a way that I can like, if it's, or where is like Asian MMA coverage in English, either it's not being done at all or it's being done poorly. How can I step into that and basically put something there that I feel like fans are demanding that is not there? So that's kind of been my MO of growth so far. Worked out well so far. So you're on Reddit a lot arguing about WMMA, mainly about Whaley. Oh, I'm sure you are. I love to hear that about her GOAT status, and I keep getting reamed by the same stuff that you received when you made a vid about Whaley. It's good that we argue for her since not many do. Hey man, keep fighting the good fight. When your website goes up, I'm going to put a bookmark on it and notifications. You do great work. That, man, thank you so much, Sammy. Appreciate that. One of the things I hate about MMA culture is the hatred for Asian fighters. And man, dude, I'm looking down, seeing a ton of positive things. Really, I feel like I even want to like screenshot. I'm going to screenshot all these positive compliments, because when things suck, you got to look back on the people that support you. So I just took a screenshot of all that. So that's super cool. Yeah, I my goal is just for it to be something that every day I just kind of hop on. It's like if I'm going to make a post about, it's like if I'm going to post about this on Twitter, why not just make it an article that lives in the Google search that people can just find, and they don't have to scroll through social media stuff to try and find things they're looking for. They can just go to a website and it's all right there. It's all clean. It's free. I mean, there'll be ads on it, but like there's not going to be, it is going to be a very filler free site. And it's going to be straight to the point. Shooto event happens this weekend. Hey, like, where can I just get real fast results where I can just go and it's going to be right there? Boom. Bidang FC 4 happens in India. I want really quick results. Boom, right there. Go to Indian MMA news. Boom. Or I want to see like what's the next 3 months look like in Kazakh MMA. Here it is right here. eventually there's going to be more tools available to you to be able to like find like prospects and stuff like, okay, who's coming up in Kazakhstan? Who's coming up in India? You'll be able to have that so readily available. And hopefully it's something that people will use as a, like other websites will use as a tool just to be like, hey, yeah, MMA ecosystem did a feature on this guy, or they're highlighting this, or like different things like that. So yeah, just hopefully a really useful resource. And I will definitely, if you all have suggestions of like, I would love to see this on an Asian MMA website more, love to see this tool, this resource, this kind of news being highlighted, definitely let me know. For sure. Will you have a newsletter? Not yet. I've actually done that before. Every week I would send out like a calendar, basically like an updated calendar of combat sports Asian MMA schedule. I think I would also highlight some things on there. And I think at that point in my career, I had about 10K Instagram followers, wasn't really on any other social media. And so it was kind of slow starting off. And then it was one of those things I was like, man, it's taking a lot of work to put out this newsletter every week and not really giving me much benefit. So, yeah, I eventually paused that, but it's something that I could put back on the table in the future for sure. Yeah. Talking about hiring other writers and free. Yeah. Eventually. Yeah. I mean, my goal for MMA ecosystem is to be able to have a team of people that I can both hire, but also not just hire and throw a few bucks at them, but be able to like pay pretty well. And I know that's like a lofty goal, kind of a pipe dream maybe. I mean, everyone would like to be paid well, but I really do want to create a space that's like very focused. Like eventually, I think my most immediate need on MMA ecosystem for the website will be like, hey, I need someone who speaks like Japanese, who watches these events to be able to put up results like as they happen or quickly, things like that. I'm going to need people that are based in different countries that speak different languages. And that's both important to me because to get the real like authentic and to be able to like work through a lot of cultural linguistic stuff, but also it's important to me if I have a company that is highlighting Asian MMA, it's important to me that is mostly made up of people of Asian descent that can help shape that business. Because I mean, I'm a white dude that lives in Portland. And, you know, I've traveled to Asia. I've been to a couple places, hope to do it again. Can speak some language here and there, but like, I'm never going to be able to understand culture and language, and, you know, especially writing. That would be another dream, is to be able to like write and translate articles into different languages on a website. That would be really cool too. Long time in the future though. Got a couple of analysts you might like. Yeah, I would love to have that at some point. Definitely something I'll do in the future. Like, yeah, breakdowns of key fights, things like that. That'd be great. Why would Rose deserve a fight against Weili? She's on a 2-fight losing streak. That I was trying to think from the UFC's perspective. I wasn't saying what I would want to do. I was just saying like, yeah, if the UFC, like, if for whatever reason the UFC doesn't do Jong versus Yan, or say like Yan gets injured and is going to be out for a year, okay, who's Weili gonna fight? Like, she's ready to fight. Who we're gonna do? Okay, because no other options are available. No one in the top 5 coming off a win. Rose says she'd love to have that trilogy fight, so we're gonna do that. I could see the UFC doing that. I'm not saying that would be my first or even second choice, but just trying to think through like, okay, they've booked Tatiana Suarez, who was the only other fighter that could like reasonably be booked. Not again, not in my opinion, but like just trying to see this from the UFC's perspective. And she just got booked. So trying to think, what else could they even do? Yeah, no, I'm with you on there. Okay, so talking about Sabrina de Souza, 15-0 amateur record, 3-time IMMAF world champion, only woman that beat PFL stud Michelle Montague. Very nice. She's only one of the most hyped up WMMA prospects of all time. Yeah, I've heard her name here and there. I just like haven't literally like followed her. Greatest female amateur fighter in MMA history. Honestly, I think she could beat several of the UFC WMMA. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that they're giving someone that has fought pro MMA for a while and has like a decent. I think Ghag is maybe a 6-2 record. Quality of some of those wins, who knows? But like, I love that they're giving her a fight like that, just to be like, hey, she's got all this hype behind her. Let's put her ahead a little bit. Let's see how she fares against someone like this, rather than like another person making their pro debut. I love that. So MMA media is bad. MMA junkie and MMA fighting is all about what did Sean Strickland say today. Yeah, it's not just about that. It's mix and match. Or take pictures with Hasbulla when covering Abu Dhabi. I mean, there's things I don't care for from like any site. I don't know if there's any MMA media site that I'm like, everything you do, I just want to print and put on my wall. Not necessarily. But there's like, when I think about some of the folks that work at those sites, there are some really, really high quality media members that work there. I think, I mean, just from like they're trying to like have some content out there that's going to bring in a casual fan base, but they do put out high quality content. Like Nolan King, good Lord, Sean Al-Shadi and Hawani does good work for MMA fighting. Mike Bond, Jose Youngs, those guys, like they're very high quality media members for sure. Continue that Migu interview. Yeah, sure, do it. If you're interested, it's like a minute-long clip of him saying that he would love to visit China again. And to clarify the question earlier, when Colby, who is the massive MAGA dude, bro, is praising Wei Li, what does that say about her detractors, fighters, and fans alike? I'm not going to say everyone that doesn't like Wei Li is a bigot, because you might just not like her fighting style, or you might just be a big Rose supporter or Suarez supporter or Lemos. Like, you may just be a big fan of I feel like I'm pretty careful to call someone a bigot. But hey, if you're a really famous person, you're gonna have a lot of haters. Even if you're a saint, you're gonna have a lot of haters. That's all I have to say. Let's see. Mentioned Suarez, weird intense fan base due to her comeback story. Is Wei Li's comeback story not inspirational? From losing twice, being vilified where she's from, then winning back the belt. No, it's a comeback story. It is totally a comeback story. Suarez, it's a different kind of comeback story. Like, people love like cancer, not just cancer comeback stories, but like, or I was in a gang, or I had all of these life obstacles. I think it's a different kind of comeback story. And then, after that, injuries, things like that. But I think mainly Suarez is like it's more like her health stuff. Which I mean, I'm not here to say like, weighing people's trauma. I'm not really in that business of like, your trauma is more traumatic than this person. I don't know. No, Suarez, she does have a good story. I'm not saying she doesn't have a good story. It definitely is, or Wei Li, they're just different. They're different. So how do I predict the winners of Road to UFC Season 2? Okay, I'll go into this way deeper because I'm going to have to sign off here in a sec. And I hate to but promise me, I promise you, I'll go deep into this stuff. I've even got a podcast invitation to do this exact thing. A guy invited me on his podcast to break down these fights. So I'll do that, and I'll do that on my channel. But just off the cuff, Ray Tsuruya versus Jinyu Shirya. That is a hard one for me to pick. Honestly, a lot of I was adding these fights onto Tapology today, just like an hour or two ago. This squad, these finalists of Road to UFC Season 2 is such a good group. Like really, really solid fighters. I wish all of them could at least get a shot in the UFC. Really hard ones to pick. I mean, I feel like I have Ija. That one I feel I think that's the one I feel most confident in. Lee Kai Win punches really hard though. Ija, oh gosh, the flyweight one. I feel like I'll probably end up going Ray Tsuruya, but Jinyu Shirya has been the ultimate dark horse of this whole season and has come out of nowhere. So, but I do think, and Ray showed a little bit of elements of being a little bit young and green in his semifinal fight, but no, I think he should get it. And then bantamweight is super hard for me to choose too. I think I don't know, man. That's a hard one. I feel like that's going to be like a split decision or something. Because Lee Chong-ho, when he gets going, he can be a hammer. But I feel like Xiaolong is criminally underestimated because he's had several really flat performances under the big lights. But it seems like he has gotten going pretty well in this season of Road to UFC. So just based off those two performances, and he has a lot more experience. I'm probably going to go Xiaolong there, but it would not surprise me if Lee Chong-ho won because again, he's a hammer and he's a tank. And then Shin Haraguchi and Rongju. So hard to choose that. You said you'd like to see him go to 145. I could see that. And I think kind of similar to the last one I picked, I would probably go Rongju. Again, like he has looked really good in his last couple fights and has a ton of experience. It seems like things are coming together both for him and Xiaolong at the UFC PI. So I'm going to lean him, but like, again, wouldn't be surprised if Shin Haraguchi won. That guy's a hammer too. So love these fights. Did I see Zhang Weili on the cover of Prada? No, I didn't. Seems like she's got a lot of endorsements lately. Just being a champion give you. Oh, it totally does. Much better to take a photo shoot with a belt over your shoulder. I didn't see that. I'll have to look that up. Or no. I did see that. It totally does. So good for her. Gonna sign off here. I've got to do a few things before the next thing. But yeah, good stuff today. Exciting times. Pumped to watch UFC this weekend. I haven't decided where I'm going to watch it yet. If I don't have a whole lot of obligations behind this card. There's only one Asian fighter on the card. So probably just going to find a context that I really just enjoy watching fights and have a good time. So enjoy that and enjoy the rest of the events going on this weekend. Until next week, enjoy the fights.